everyone, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. Okay, so today I am doing my monthly wrap, talking all the books I read in the month of January 2023. Let's start off as per usual, putting the stats up on the screen. Let's begin. In the month of January, I read a total of 10 books comprising of 4 cozy mysteries, 3 fantasies, 2 memoirs, and a horror. I'm so happy, y'all, that I mixed up my reading genres this month. 4 different genres. Fantastic. Really happy about that. Alright, to my age groups, I read 2 YA, 7 adult, and 1 middle grade. To my lengths, I read 1 3/4 tome, 3 half tomes, and 6 novellas, totaling 2,721 pages. To my star ratings, I had 3 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars, 2 4 stars, and 1 3 stars. So a pretty good month, considering that 3 stars was my lowest ranked book. Okay, so I completed a total of 10 books, but I also had 2 books that I did not complete, so I'm going to discuss them to begin with. The first book that I did not complete was a book that I DNF'd. What does DNF stand for? Did not finish. And that was this book, Furthermore, by Tahara Mofi. This is a middle grade fantasy, and I DNF'd this after about, I don't even know, 3 or 4 chapters, because honestly, it was just too childish for me. I don't have a lot of time to go into detail in monthly wraps because I have so many books to talk about. So just to keep it brief, and I'm just saying it neutrally, no judgment, just for me, it was too childish. The protagonist is incredibly mean and rude, and it did not work for me at all. So I just DNF'd because I have way too many books that I want to get to. I also shelved a book. Now, the difference between a DNF and a shelve for me, when it comes to terminology that I use, is that a DNF is a book that you did not finish and don't plan to go back to. A book that you shelve is a book that you are putting down temporarily. You're putting it back on your shelf, but you plan to go back to it at some point. And I shelved this book, Beneath the Sugar Sky by Sienna Maguire. This is book number 3 in the Wayward Children's series. It had nothing to do with this book at all, and everything to do with the book I read prior to this and wanting to read the next book in that series. We'll discuss that when we get towards the end of my wrap up. But yeah, I shelved this one. I'll get back to it at some point throughout the rest of the year. But let's now move on to the books that I actually did read in the month of January 2023. So the first book that I read in the month of January, and therefore the first book that I read in 2023, was a buddy read that we're doing over on my Discord of the first book in the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. It is called Clockwork Angel. This is a YA fantasy book, and I gave this book 4 stars. So the premise of this book is that we follow a woman by the name of Tessa. Even though it's a multi-perspective, Tessa is the one perspective, who has come to England from America to be with her brother. Little does she know that her brother's letter is going to lead her into the hands of the Dark Sisters, a truly evil force who wish to prime her for their master. Can Tessa escape? And if so, what would lie ahead for her future once she finds out what she truly is? So my thoughts on this book is that, yeah, the first 4 chapters or so I found to be quite confusing. I have read the Mortal Instruments series, which is the, in my view, the original series of this entire world of Cassandra Clare's that she has masterfully written. And I assumed at the very least that this series would be written in a similar vein. I felt almost disoriented by the first 4 chapters. However, after that, things settled back into what I know and love about Cassandra Clare's works, and I truly enjoyed the ride. My favourite character is Will. I truly enjoyed reading about him and seeing his character arc in book 1. I also really appreciated having Tessa as the protagonist, especially given she doesn't know who or what she is, and we get to see her go through everything from her perspective. But the cherry on top of the proverbial cake was the appearance of a character from the Mortal Instruments series. I won't say who it is, but it made me very happy. Oh my goodness. One of my two absolute favorite characters from the Mortal Instruments series, or even if you prefer the Shadowhunter TV series, appeared in this first book, and it made my day. 4 stars from me, and as I said in my TBR for February, we are planning to buddy read book number 2 in February, so if you'd like to join us, please come along and do so. So the next book that I read was this book, Last Rite by Lisa Desrochers. This is, well, some call it paranormal, others call it a fantasy. I call it a fantasy. This is a YA fantasy, and it is book number 3 in the Personal Demons series, and I gave this book an overwhelming 5 stars. It has taken me 3 years to complete this 3-book trilogy, but it ended really, really well, and I'm so glad that I did. So the premise of this third book is that this is it. The final battle is approaching. Though she hasn't had long to prepare, Franny better be ready for the ultimate battle between heaven and hell. But when she's given an opportunity to change her mind and fight for the other side, which path will she take? Who will win the ultimate battle? And what, pray tell, will become of Gabe and dear Luke? All these questions and more answered in this thrilling conclusion. For those of you who don't know, the setup of this series as a whole is that it's multi-perspective that kind of changes throughout the course of the series, by which I mean we always have Franny, who starts off as a human. Franny is going to play an integral role but in a massive battle between heaven and hell. So God sends down an angel from heaven, and Lucifer sends up a demon from hell, both trying to tag her for their side because she's going to play that crucial role, and we're going to see what happens. In book number 1, we follow the perspective of Franny as well as Luke, even though I don't remember the guy's name, but I think it's Gabe. We have an angel there as well, but we don't follow his perspective. In book 2, I think we follow all 3 perspectives, and we certainly follow all 3 perspectives in book 3. Even though it took me 3 years, don't judge my thoughts of the series on how long it took me. It's a wonderful series, and I need to thank one of my dear friends. This is the first book that I ever picked up on booktube, or Personal Demons book 1 is, and so I really do love the series. I highly recommend it. If a massive battle between heaven and hell and following the perspective of an angel, a demon, and a human appeals to you, I highly recommend the series. I thought it was wonderful. So my thoughts on this book was just, oh my word, wow. This series has literally been the single longest journey of my reading life. I began book 1 in January of 2020 and have and here I sit, having finished the series on January 7, 2023. It's been a 3-year read for me. So what did I think of the conclusion? Man, it couldn't have gone any better. It was way beyond what I expected and was fully wrapped up by the end of the book with no lingering questions, which is always a plus for me. Just a massive thank you to Lisa Desrochers for a very entertaining series. And yeah, I just wish that the series could have continued, because I definitely would have loved to have read more. 5 stars from me. So the next book that I read was this book, Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library by Chris Grabenstein or Stein. So this is book number 1 in the Mr. Lemoncello Library series, and I loved it. It is marketed as is it middle grade? I think it is. It is marketed, as a middle grade mystery, even though I more think of it as a middle grade fantasy. It's actually marketed as a middle grade mystery. So, I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. This book is an omniscient narration middle grade, where the main character appears to be Kyle. Kyle enters into a competition to be one of 12 children to take part in the very first ever library in town's history. He becomes one of the first 12 children ever to be a part of this library, and it is the first library that the town has ever seen. And the library is going to open up with a competition that he is a part of. So it's to be a fun game night with lots of games, but when the night is over, the children are still locked in and will have to find their way out of Mr. Lemoncello's libraries. Honestly, this was an amazing book. I love books with games and have always wanted to do an escape room. I cannot think of a better place to feature an escape room than a library. The characters were wildly diverse, which is always a plus. smart children, funny children, quote unquote evil children, quote unquote good children, and the games and mysterious clues as well as the library itself were also fascinating. It was a real page turner and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. 5 stars from me. So the next book that I read was this book, Latte Trouble by Cleo Coyle. This is book number 3 in the Coffee House Mystery series. It is an adult cozy mystery series and I gave this book 3 stars. So in this particular one, Claire and Mateo's cafe are hosting fashionistas. When their coffee boy takes a cup of coffee over to a woman, a man takes the cup from him, drinks it, and dies. But why? And is the coffee boy the one responsible for the murder? Now, honestly, this one was up and down for me. I enjoyed the first quarter. I was kind of bored for the second quarter. I loved the third quarter and the fourth quarter was okay. I wish there were more antagonist perspective stuff than there was. We only had one moment with that in this book at the beginning. I also wish that there was more coffee stuff in this book. I loved Madame so much more in this book, however, and that is definitely a redeeming quality for Cleo Coyle. I did not like Madame so much in books 1 and 2. For those of you who don't know, in this series we're following Claire Cosi, who runs a cafe. She and her ex-husband run it together. It used to be run by her ex-husband's mother, whose name is just Madame. That's what she's referred to as. And so I didn't really like Madame in books 1 and 2, but I loved her a whole lot more. She really was the saving grace of book 3 for me. But yeah, I loved the climax or the pre-climax involving the hotel scene. I won't say more just to keep it spoiler free, but just wanted to make it identifiable for those who know. I loved the hotel scene. I thought it was done really well. But I have to say, disappointingly, that this book was an average read for me. I loved book 1 and book 2. And book 3, yeah, I mean, it was a 3-star read. It wasn't like it was 2 or 1, but it certainly wasn't a 4 or a 5-star read for me. So a bit disappointing given how books 1 and 2 were for me. An average read, 3 stars. So the next book I read was this book, Have I Told You This Already by Lauren Graham. This is an adult memoir and I gave this book 5 stars. So in this work, Lauren discusses things that she doesn't want to forget. She talks about it in a way as though it's a book of many different essays, all on varying topics. From Ryan Gosling to comparisons between the character and a real person, to marmalade and squirrels and everything else in between. Even Old Lady Jackson making a second appearance. This book will take you on a wild journey. It may not be an epic fantasy, it may not be an intriguing sci-fi, it may not be a thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat, but what it is a delightful conversation that you find yourself having with someone that you could be proud to call a dear friend. So I loved Lauren Graham's very first memoir, Talking as Fast as I Can. I love Lauren Graham from Gilmore Girls. She plays the role of Lorelai, who in my view is the protagonist of that show. And book 1, as well as this one, her second memoir, feel more to me like a sit-down conversation she's having with you as a friend of hers, as opposed to a book where you kind of feel separated from, book and reader. This just felt like a sit-down discussion, and I absolutely loved it so much. There is so much that I want to say, so I won't say everything. I'll just say that, yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I highly recommend checking out my Goodreads review. I have many paragraphs in my Goodreads review. I gush about this book so much. If you love Gilmore Girls or Lauren Graham, or you just want to read a book where you feel like someone is sitting down and having a great, fun, humorous, funny, emotional, and yet just amazingly all-round discussion that is just happens to be a memoir, then I highly recommend this book. I thought it was fantastic. An overwhelming 5 stars from me. Lauren Graham, please, 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 please write another memoir. It was so good. So the next book that I read was this book, Sorry Not Sorry by Naya Rivera. This is also an adult memoir and I gave this book 4 stars. So this is actually a book that I've been wanting to read ever since it was released, but I just either would intermittently here and there forget about it, or when I would remember about it, I just wouldn't have space on my TBR. After reading Have I Told You This Already by Lauren Graham, I was in the mood for another adult memoir. I just love memoirs. It's not something that I somehow remember or recall after a span of time has taken place when I've read a memoir. But every time I read a memoir of someone that I love, all I can think is, why don't I read more memoirs? I love memoirs. So I was in a memoir mood and I just had a fleeting moment of being a mood reader. So I decided to read another memoir and then recalled that I want to read Sorry Not Sorry. I'd heard a lot of things in the media about this book, particularly how Naya Rivera dragged Leah Michelle's name through the mud with this book, and that partially intrigued me because I wanted to see what Naya had to say about this, because a lot of people from Glee especially had spoken about how Leah Michelle was behind the scenes. But not to let anyone down, Naya really doesn't dig as deeply into Leah Michelle as I thought she would have. In fact, there were a couple of times where she brought Leah Michelle up here or there, but it just seemed more because Leah was there in that moment that she's trying to discuss, and what was the focus in this situation was more what she's discussing as opposed to Leah Michelle. Leah Michelle's more like an afterthought. So yeah, please don't go into this book thinking it's going to be a tell-all about Leah Michelle. It's absolutely not. The media definitely blew this one out of proportion. In saying that, I did really enjoy reading about Naya's life, and unfortunately she has since passed on. It was a very tragic circumstance that surrounded her death, but reading about her life in general, I really enjoyed it. There were a lot of great life lessons to take away from this that she seemed to take on board herself, but I also wanted to take away from reading this book, and I thought all in all it was a good book, and I gave it 4 stars. So the next book that I read was this book, Murder Most Frothy by Cleo Coyle. This is an adult cozy mystery, and it is book number 4 in the Coffee House Mystery series, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. This book was so much better than book 3, and all I could think after I finished reading this was, welcome back, Cleo Coyle, because after I read book number 3, I just thought, oh my word, I planned to read books 3 and 4 of this series in January, and then 5 and 6 in February, and all I could think was, do I just DNF the series now? Because book 3 just let me down so much. But book number 4 bounced back big time, and I cannot wait for book number 5. So the premise of this one is that Claire has taken a job in the Hamptons for the 4th of July. She's working in this mansion for this guy, and everything seems to be going well until she goes to look for her boss and finds someone else in his bathroom, dead. But why was he killed? It couldn't be because from afar he looks like her boss, could it? With the amazing persuasion of Madame, Claire sets about trying to uncover who the killer is before her actual boss is murdered himself. So I have to say that ultimately the reveal of this one did let me down, which is why I gave it 4.5 instead of 5 stars. But otherwise, this book was just so much better than book number 3. The mystery was so intriguing from start to end, and I was on the edge of my seat all the way through. So well done, Cleo Coyle. If you love coffee and you love your mysteries when it comes to cozies, this is what you go for. I love the passion that Claire Cosey, the protagonist, as well as Cleo Coyle, the author, has for coffee, but I also love the mysteries in books 1, 2, and 4. We're just gonna say 3 was a blimp on the series and let it go. But yeah, this was, oh my gosh, vintage Cleo Coyle. I absolutely loved it. Cannot wait to read book number 5, 4.5 stars from me. So the next book that I read was this book, Sam by Ian Robb Wright. This is book number 1 in the Damien Verse series, and it is an adult horror, and I gave it 4.5 stars. So a little bit of backstory. In 2022, last year, I read book number 4 in this series called The Housemates. I did not know that that The Housemates was a part of a series. I thought it was a standalone, and the quickest way to describe The Housemates by Ian Robb Wright is if you take the critically acclaimed reality TV show Big Brother and cross that with the critically acclaimed film film series Saw, put them together in one book. That's what you have. It was exactly what I wanted. I loved it so much. I was praising Ian Rob Wright's name so much after reading that book. And then when I found out it was book number 4, the final book in a quartet series, I decided to go back to the beginning and read book number 1. Sam is book number 1 in that series. One thing that I questioned about reading Sam once I was done is that this series is the Damien verse series, and in book number 4, we follow Damien. In book number 1, there is no Damien. So I was a little bit confused as to why this is called Damien verse when there was no Damien. In saying that, I loved the book. As I said, I gave it 4.5 stars. So in this omniscient narration book, we follow 2 main characters, Angela and Tim. Angela is a retired priest and Tim is a scientist. Jessica hires both of them to assist her with her son. He's been doing some really odd things lately, and Jessica doesn't know if it's something human or more. So she sets Tim and Angela to their work to finally, once and for all, uncover the truth about Sam. I really enjoyed this book. As I said, I thought book 4, The Housemates, was fantastic. But I have to say that this book was almost as good as that one. I gave The Housemates 5 stars. I gave this one 4.5 stars. The only reason it got 4.5 stars was 1, it had a very slow beginning compared to The Housemates, and 2, as I said, I was failing to see the connection between the 2 books. So because there was no Damien in this one. So I'm hoping reading books 2 and 3 are going to help connect everything for me as to how it connects to book 4 and as to why it's called the Damien verse. But overall, I loved it. If you are someone who likes the are they not possessed trope, then I highly recommend this one. If you are someone who reads a horror because you want a horror to the umpteenth degree, read this. If you are someone who picks up a horror hoping it's not going to be too scary, I don't recommend this one. Ian Rob Wright writes adult horrors that cross every line and have to be marketed as an adult horror. So you get what you ask for with an adult horror in this book. So just putting that warning out there. If you're after a full-on horror, read this book. If you're not, then maybe it's not for you. But I thought it was fantastic. It fit the brief. It was extremely entertaining all the way through, and I gave it 4.5 stars. So the next book that I read was this book, Beaches, Bungalows and Burglaries by Tonya Kappas. This is book number 1 in the Campers and Criminals Cozy Mystery series. It is an adult cozy mystery, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. Now, the premise of this book is that we follow Mae West, a woman whose husband had Ponzi schemed people out of millions of dollars. Now, Mae was used to the rich life, but once word got out about what was going on and what her husband had done, he became not only her ex, she also lost everything. Everything that is except for a campground called Happy Trails. Oh well, at least the brochure makes it look incredible. But then, when Mae shows up to the camping ground, she finds it to be old and dilapidated. Mae vows to do what she can to get everyone their money back, starting with a makeover for the campgrounds. It's then that Mae discovers her ex-husband dead. Can she convince the others of Normal, Kentucky to believe she's innocent and to help her raise money for the campground before it's too late? Only time will tell. Now, this book honestly made me want to get rid of everything else in my TBR and just read this series. While the book was short, it made up for that by the fact that it was had such a fun, cozy side to it. I really loved getting to know the characters, and the mystery was so intriguing too. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. The only reason I docked 5 stars was because on a personal level, I was very, very, very upset with who the killer was. I actually grew to very much love that character, and I wasn't necessarily upset that this person was chosen to be the killer. I was upset that they were chosen to be the killer because of what that means. And what that means is we're probably not going to see this character ever again. And that annoyed me. So I truly fell in love with this character, loved following them, loved learning about them so much. And then my heart was kind of ripped out thinking, oh gosh, you're the killer, I'm not going to see you again. And so that really did annoy me. But aside from that, it still got an overwhelming 4.5 stars from me because it was so fantastic. It is extremely cozy. I love May, love the Laundry Ladies Club, love everything about book one so much that was the reason why I shelved Beneath the Sugar Sky by Sienna Maguire and then picked up the final book I read this month, which was book number 2 in this series, Deserts, Driving and Derelicts. I really don't like the word derelicts, so I'm glad this is probably going to be the last time I'm going to say that, and from now on I'll probably just call this book number 2. I just don't like the word, but I understand that it's, alliteration, that Tonya Kappas is trying to have the same letter starting the 3 words, just like beaches, bungalows and burglaries. I just don't like the word derelicts. Alright, so this is, as I say, book number 2 in the Campers and Criminals series. I shelved Beneath the Sugar Sky and went straight into book number 2 because I needed more. I tried to read Beneath the Sugar Sky and all I could think was, no, I need to be back at Happy Trails. I cannot keep reading this. So I shelved Beneath the Sugar Sky, picked up this one and really loved it. So the premise of this one, in order to make some extra money and help out even more, May agrees to take on some cleaning jobs. While coming to collect a check from one of the clients, May finds a dead body and decides to work out who committed the crime. Now, I know that was a lame-ass premise, but it's because I didn't care so much for it as much as I do the characters and the setting. I love following May and the Laundry Club ladies. In particular, I have a soft spot for Dottie, who is the woman that works alongside May as the, I don't know if you call her co-manager or whatever, but love her. And also love the person that, as I said, let's got a couple of thoughts going on here because I just finished book number 2. I loved book number 2 overall, but just like with book number 1, I did not like the reveal. Not for the same reason as book 1 though. The reveal in book number 2 let me down because I didn't really feel like I knew who the killer was that ended up being the killer in book number 2. But I think what I'm starting to realize is with Campers and Criminals, it's just going to be one of those series where, and I can do this, absolutely I can, I'll enjoy the entire book, and then when the reveal happens, I'll just go, okay, yeah, that's the reveal, it's a letdown, that's okay, we'll just move on. And just keep going with the series, knowing that the reveal's just not going to be the reveal for me, but that I'm going to love everything else. So in book 1, it was because I didn't want that character I love so much taken away from me. In book 2, I didn't know who the character was. By the time they were revealing it, they're going, it was this one. I'm going, who the heck are you? So, but I do love this series so much. So for the second time in a row, this series gets a 4.5 stars from me. But that is it. Those are all of the 10 books that I read in the month of January 2023. What books did you read in the month of January 2023 to start off your new year? Let me know in the comments section below. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone!